Good morning to you, Christel Bell here. We have breaking news just into the newsroom. Myrtle Beach Police is searching for a vehicle in connection to an assault and possible abduction. All right, we turn now to the PD. The first day of school for students and teachers in Florence means the first day in a new school. All right, football fans, back to school means high school football season starts this week. Are you ready?
We are.
Yeah, all month we have been taking a closer look at the teams in our area, and this morning we're looking at the Hartsville Red Foxes. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Christel Bell. Let's go straight to First Alert meteorologist Andrew Dockery to find out when things will start to clear up. 5:08 now in North Carolina. Our local districts there don't return until next Monday, but public schools in Laurinburg are launching an advanced security software this school year. The Scotland County schools say the software called Enforce 911 allows faculty to communicate directly with police in case of an emergency. The software tool claims to reduce police response time and provide specific locations inside buildings during a critical event. Now, that tool allows staff to launch an alert in seconds from their computers or smartphones. All right, good news for everybody. Free car wash courtesy of Mother Nature.
Yeah, what you just missed during the commercial break was Christel doing a little jig, a little
At
dance.
the car wash.
At the car wash. Yes. You won't need the car wash today.
Starting to pick up right outside our door. What are you feeling now?
Feeling the wind start to pick up out here just outside 17 bypass at the station. And you know, one thing that I really was surprised to see was not a lot of cars out here on 17 bypass. To me, that says folks are taking heed and are listening. We do see a couple of cars out here. I've been in and out about 30 minutes and have seen a couple of ambulances and first responders going by on 17 bypass. But we got a long break from the rain in this area. It happened this morning in the area of 17th Avenue South and Ocean Boulevard. Police say that truck was last seen driving south on Ocean Boulevard. We want to show you these images just sent to us from a viewer who was at the scene. That witness tells WMBF News he saw a woman being assaulted by several men, and then he watched them force her into the back seat of a pickup truck. The witness says he took the pictures and called 911 to report the assault and possible abduction. Now, we spoke with Myrtle Beach Police. They tell us they have not confirmed an abduction investigation is taking place. We're going to stay on top of this developing story for you online, on air, and also look for alerts on your WMBF News app. Now to just another heartbreaking story. This one, a deadly house fire in Erie, Pennsylvania. 5 children died early Sunday morning. Neighbors say they heard the screams of teens who escaped to the second floor porch roof. Those teens were telling people on the ground that babies were trapped inside. In all, 7 people had to be saved. Authorities say the mother of some of the children was flown to the hospital. No word on her condition. One neighbor tried to get inside to help, but just couldn't due to the thick smoke. We don't know what started the fire, but investigators are looking into possible arson.
Christel?
Yeah. So, Casey, I want to ask you, because we know we were really concerned about the Surfside Pier. Can you see the pier from where you are? What does it look like now? We know it's still not complete, not rebuilt from Matthew. Duke Energy also reporting about 4,500 outages across the Grand Strand and PD, with most of them coming from Dillon and Marion counties. And we actually have some video from Santee Cooper to show you too. The company tweeted this out yesterday during the storm. Watch this. You can see a tree. There it is, touching a power line and causing sparks to fly. Santee Cooper says this happened at their Horry Georgetown distribution office on Gardner Lacey Road. Look at that. The company wants to remind everyone to stay away from downed lines and trees that may be near them. Well, now that Dorian has come and gone, the time is now to repair the damage left behind.
The city of Myrtle Beach.
In your health news, NICUs in the U.S. have narrowed some of the racial gaps in care for very preterm infants, but a new study suggests it's still not enough. Researchers from the University of South Carolina looked at 12 years of data from nearly 800 NICUs across the country. They focused on infants who were born between 22 and 29 weeks of gestation. Over time, there were improvements in treatment and outcomes for Black women and their babies. However, the study says Black infants were still more likely to die or have serious complications than white infants. Police say a lone gunman, 22-year-old Tristan Terrell, opened fire at UNC Charlotte on the last last day of classes, the campus was quickly placed on lockdown.
Interesting combination there.
It is, and it also reminds me of what we're covering in our podcast. We have True
Yes.
Carolina Crime, where there is a bank robbery that happened back in the 1930s in Lake City at the Palmetto State Bank, a time where tobacco was really booming.
Yes.
And it's said to have ties to the big American gangster Babyface Nelson, but they robbed the bank and actually left some money, $5 for the bank owner.
No.
Left them money so that they get back home. They dropped him off on the road. It's a
Oh,
really
gosh.
interesting story, but this
And-
is what it reminds me of.
Yeah, and this
Yes, surveillance video from that day shows Brittany Drexel leaving the Blue Water Resort here at 8:48. To this day, no arrests have been made, but the FBI and Myrtle Beach police say they're not giving up.
And we're still hopeful that we'll solve this case.
10 years, and the FBI says the Brittany Drexel case has never gone cold.
We're still receiving leads in this case, consistently receiving credible leads in this case that help us take positive steps, progress the case forward, and we've taken action on those, so we're heading in the right direction.
But a 10-year-old case comes with its challenges.
There are difficulties that present themselves as far as evidence decaying. You have technical electronic evidence that becomes deleted, memories fade from people, and people with information die.
As for persons of interest in this case,
We're not going to roll anybody in, rule anybody out at that point. We just have a universe of information we're working with and trying to develop the subjects we need to bring them to justice.
in 2016, investigators said they believed Brittany was dead after hearing from an FBI informant she was fed to alligators. I wanted to know if that was still an angle that they were looking into.
I'm not going to comment or offer, distinctions on what we think is credible now and not so much now. But we always take that information and reevaluate it, and that's one of those pieces we're still looking at, as with any piece of information in this case.
Since day one of this case, investigators have asked for the public's help and continue to do so.
Somebody or more than one person has information that could help us out in this case. Whether that person comes forward or not is up to them, but we need the public's help in solving this case. So
this case is not closed. It's been tough on the family, and we're committed to continue this investigation to provide answers as well.
Our coverage of the 10th anniversary of Brittany Drexel's disappearance continues throughout the day tomorrow. We'll also have a live 1-hour special with new insight on the case on WMBF News at 7. In the studio, Christel Bell, WMBF News. Yeah, Myrtle Beach is responsible for about 28,000 trees throughout its parks and public places. Now, these trees start affecting you when they need to be trimmed or removed because those services come at a price tag. While Myrtle Beach's Park Division has staff to maintain its trees, the city also has a contract with a company, Parkman Tree Service. I found the city has paid more than $112,000 to Parkman since January. The check registry shows these services are for things like tree removal, trimming, and stump grinding. I reached out to Myrtle Beach to find out why it needed a company in addition to the city staff to complete this work.
You'll see some of our city crews out trimming palm trees, out doing other maintenance, certainly on the right-of-way, but in the parks as well. When we hire a contractor, it's typically for something that we cannot do ourselves, either from a resource, human power, or from an equipment standpoint.
Things like a 40-foot dead tree is an example of some of the things that falls out of the city's area of expertise. Reporting in Myrtle Beach for It's Your Money, I'm Christel Bell, WMBF News. Yeah, Eric, this is a really sad situation for everyone who knew Elizabeth. Neighbors say the little girl was found by her father and others who live in the neighborhood. I spoke with those neighbors who are parents themselves, and they say they're devastated for this family.
It's heartbreaking.
Residents say they knew something was wrong when they heard neighbors yelling for 2-year-old Elizabeth Brown.
He come down and asked us if he seen a little girl. I was like, no, I ain't seen nobody. I seen him kept pacing back and forth, looking, screaming for this little girl. So I was like, is there anything I can do?
Horry County Fire Rescue says the girl's father is firefighter and EMT Brandon Brown. Neighbor Vicki Goslin says she was there helping Brandon search the neighborhood when they saw Elizabeth in a nearby pond.
He saw her, he screamed. He's like, no, it can't be. And when he went, as soon as he jumped in the pond, next thing I know, he was laying down on her doing CPR.
And he literally did CPR until the ambulances arrived.
We knew right then and there that she wasn't going to make it, but I was trying to give the parents confidence.
Goslin says Brandon did get Elizabeth's heart beating again.
Then that's when they rushed her to Conway.
Neighbors tell me from Conway Medical Center, she was airlifted to Grand Strand Medical Center, where she passed away.
It's just horrible to watch somebody have to go through that, especially the mom. I feel for her the most because it seemed like she couldn't even she couldn't even live anymore when it all happened. She was laying in her floor, just barely could even cope.
I'm told Elizabeth is a twin and one of 3 children.
I just really hate what they're going through, and, you know, they're in everybody's thoughts and prayers.
I just wished I could do more for them, and I want them to know that they're in my family's prayers and also have my church praying for them too.
Now, there is a visitation for Elizabeth tonight, and her funeral is scheduled for tomorrow. She would have turned 3 on Friday. Live in the studio, Christel Bell, WMBF News. As 2018 wraps up from now until the end, we're looking back at some of the biggest stories WMBF News has covered. One story still very fresh on our minds as we continue to heal. It was just a little more than 2 months ago our community was struck to the core when 7 law enforcement officers were ambushed, leaving 2 dead and 5 injured. In this morning's A Year in Review, we look back at the Vintage Place shooting in Florence County.
We've had several officers that were injured, several officers shot. It's a terrible situation.
Respond to Vintage Drive and Half Mile Road. Vintage Drive and Half Mile Road, have an officer down.
The victims in this case need all the help and support we can give them. We're going to make sure they're taken care of.
I can only echo the sentiments of the sheriff and ask for, at this particular time, the prayers of every human being who knows the Lord Jesus Christ to pray for these officers.
October 3rd, 2018 will long be remembered as a solemn day in Florence County.
This situation's hit home.
After officials say a gunman, later identified as 74-year-old Frederick Hopkins, opened fire on law enforcement officers from his home in the Vintage Place neighborhood.
These officers went there unknowing the firepower the suspect had.
Neighbors told WMBF News they could hear the gunshots.
Hearing the gunshots that I heard at the rapid rate that they were firing, and it seemed to go on and on and on.
Investigators first arrived at the home on Ashton Drive around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. With a search warrant, officials say once the first 3 Florence County deputies arrived on scene, they were ambushed and shot.
Central 240, can we make access to the patient? 240, let us know that this time that the patient is going to be behind the residence and the suspect was still firing.
Backup law enforcement would race to the scene, which included members of the Florence Police Department. By 4:50, news came in that a second officer was hit. In seconds, a third was struck.
Shots are still being fired at this time. Shots are still being fired in the area. This situation is not getting any better. Please stay out of Vintage Place until we call.
In total, 7 law enforcement officers were shot. 3 deputies from the Florence County Sheriff's Office, Deputy Ari Davis, Investigator Sarah Miller, and Investigator Farrah Turner, who would later pass away from her injuries. And the 4 officers from the Florence Police Department, Officer Brian Hart, Officer Travis Scott, and Officer Scott Williamson. During an emotional press conference, law enforcement would reveal that the 4th officer, Sergeant Terrence Caraway, lost his life in the line of duty.
Today we lost a good friend of mine, an officer that I've known for 30 years.
Barricaded inside the home for nearly 2 hours, authorities say with children inside, Hopkins was finally taken into custody. Later, investigators revealed the suspect was aware the 3 Florence County investigators were coming to the home and seemed to have planned the ambush. WMBF News learned those investigators were trying to interview and serve a search warrant on Hopkins' son, 28-year-old Seth Hopkins, in connection to the allegations of criminal sexual assault of a 12-year-old girl. For days, investigators combed through the crime scene, including 6 blocks and the more than 6,500 square foot home. looking for evidence.
To go there and see what these officers were faced is just something that I never want to see again.
Sheriff Leon Lott with the Richland County Sheriff's Office revealed their findings in a news conference. More than 390 shell casings were recovered outside the home. About 39 bullets were found inside, along with the 3 guns they believed Hopkins used to shoot at the officers. Investigators also say an additional 126 guns were recovered from that home.
Mom is an attorney that deals with family court matters.
Days after the shooting, Seth Hopkins was denied bond on a criminal sexual conduct charge. Frederick Hopkins is charged with 2 counts of murder and 6 counts of attempted murder. Both Seth and Frederick Hopkins remain behind bars without bond. But as we move into 2019, and nearly 3 months after what the city of Florence called the most tragic event, there are still many unanswered questions, and perhaps the biggest question we still want to know is, why did this happen? And Sergeant Terrence Caraway was a 30-year veteran with the Florence Police Department 2 weeks after he was laid to rest. Florence County investigator Farrah Turner died from her injuries. And coming up later today on WMBF News at 4, we'll take a look back at how the community mourned and remembered their lives.